prices, auction information, and appraisal analysis brought to you by the appraisal team at Compeer Financial. Compeer is committed to enhancing life in agriculture and rural America.
Our guest for this episode is Compeer Financial Certified Appraiser Josh Miller. Josh, tell us about the area that you cover for Compeer.
I cover Mason, Tazewell, Peoria, Stark, and Marshall County on the west side of the river. One kind of neat thing about that is I've been born, raised, and lived in Mason County my whole life. Kind of neat to get to work in the area that you've known forever.
Absolutely. And with your familiarity with the area, Josh, how would you describe it as it pertains to the work that you do for Compeer?
I think it really helps me because I can keep in touch with the local farmers. I can keep in touch with the area, kind of stay up to date on hot topics or if there's anything going on. My brother and I, we also farm in Mason County. It really helps us to stay in touch, up to date with current issues going on, whether it's the land market, the grain market, is there new projects coming into the area that may affect land values. So it definitely helps me to stay informed in my local area.
What would you say characterizes the land in your region?
Well, I guess to go back to Mason County is very unique in that it's very sandy. So it's primarily irrigated land. When you get to the east side of Mason County, there's some heavier ground kind of around the Mason City area. And so it's not as irrigated, but the majority of Mason County is irrigated. Kind of a couple cool things, I guess, in my territory is Mason County is the number 2 producer of popcorn in the world. A lot of popcorn. Weaver Popcorn has a big facility in Mason County, so that kind of helps some of the farmers in that area to diversify their farm. And then Morton, Illinois, which that would be in Tazewell, they're the number 1 producer of pumpkins in the world. A lot of people eating pumpkin pie and on Thanksgiving, the pumpkins, probably a pretty good chance that they came from the area that I cover.
That is interesting. So popcorn, pumpkins, I would imagine that a lot of corn and soybeans are also grown in your region. Other crops, how about livestock?
A good thing about my territory is that it is pretty diverse. Mason County is my southernmost county. Work your way north, you get up into Tazewell County, Peoria County. Some of that soil is the best in the state. Very fertile, very high PI. PI is what the soil ranking has. The PI is the soil ranking for Illinois. So if you get in a 140 or above PI, that's really good dirt. That's kind of what I have in Peoria and Tazewell County, mainly corn and soybeans. There are some organic farmers. There's a little bit of an organic market here that guys are getting some premiums on. Pretty diverse in my territory overall.
What property types do you frequently appraise?
Primarily, I do cropland. I do get into a little bit of swine. I do some finisher buildings from time to time if it's in my area. I would say the most unique thing that I've appraised recently is a straw house, which a house that is basically a clay outside and packed with straw to insulate it. Something definitely new to me. That's a nice thing about my job is that working with Compeer, every day's different. We could do flat black 80s all day long, and then the next day you have a straw house that pops up. Kind of keeps you on your toes. It allows you to get your feet wet into some different areas, not just appraise cropland all the time.
A straw house makes me think of Three Little Pigs.
That was the first thing I thought of too. Should be interesting to see how that project turns out.
Yeah, I'd love to follow up with you on that one. Let's start talking about the farmland market a little bit, Josh, given your familiarity with the farmers and the farms in your part of Illinois. How would you describe the last, 2 to 3 year period for farmland values?
I mean, the biggest story would just be the huge increase in values that we've seen basically post-COVID. We keep track of benchmark farms throughout our entire territory, and I've got 3 benchmark farms that I track. We used to look at those benchmarks basically on every year we would do an update appraisal, talk about land trends being in 3, 5, or even 10 years. The market went up so fast that we started updating the benchmarks every month, just internally. I think my Class A benchmark, which would be the best soil, I think at one time it was up almost 60% from a year or two time frame. We've just never seen that before, especially in my lifetime, but even talking to some of our more senior appraisers, how quickly it went up is just almost hard to wrap your head around.
It has been remarkable in Illinois and other states too. Of course, we've seen some headwinds that have affected the ag economy in the last couple of years. And a lot of the talk around farmland values is that they've been resilient to some of those headwinds. Is that what you've seen?
Have definitely seen that. I would say probably the biggest thing right now is just volatility. I've told some of my clients all last summer, kind of in my mind, I thought interest rates have been up for over a year now, higher interest rates than what we've seen over the last 5 years. I thought interest rates would be catching up. Commodity prices are down. Really thought that we were going to start to see maybe some softening in the land values. In my territory, Tazewell County, a couple months ago, we had one sale that was $20,600 an acre. That just kind of affirmed that there's still some money out there, and if there is a good piece of dirt, it's still going to bring pretty good money. But I think where we're starting to see the softening the most is if it's a good piece of ground and it's a little cut up, maybe it's got waterways, creek through it or something. I think that's where we're going to see the softening the most first. Then, like always, it's all about location. If the right piece of dirt comes up in the right area, it's always going to bring a decent amount of money. We're still seeing really high values, and that was kind of surprising to me.
How about the 2024 crop? And from afar, it sounded like Illinois had a really good year with yield. Certainly that can play a part in farmer sentiment. And if a farmer has a lot of bushels in the bin, they might be more inclined to maybe grab that piece of ground they've had their eye on for a while. How much of a factor is the crop year that we're coming out of?
I think that's been a big factor. And some of the higher ups in Compeer kind of joked around that the Illinois farmers are going to farm their way out of another tough year, which was kind of true. The last 2 or 3 years, we've seen record yields, and the next year you think, well, we're not going to be close to that, or there's no way we can beat that. And some of the farmers in the area are doing that. Yes, we had the lower prices, but a lot more bushels in the bin. So I think that definitely helped some guys who maybe been on the fence on pulling the trigger on, buying that piece of ground that they've always wanted. So the bushels definitely help. Another thing along with that is when we saw the huge increase in the land values, there's a lot of people in the market that are saying, I'm not paying $20,000 an acre for ground. There's a lot of people out there that maybe their top is $15,000 or $16,000 an acre, or maybe even $16,000 or $18,000 an acre in those areas of really high quality ground. And they still haven't been able to get that piece yet, just because the values have been supported. So a lot of people want to talk about a softening in the market or a crash in the market. A lot of people always want to talk about the crash of the 80s. I personally just don't think that we're ever going to see that. I think there's just a solid floor in there of guys that have just been waiting for their opportunity that haven't been able to do that the last few years, just because they don't want to pay the top end of the value.
How about the number of farms that are coming to market? Have you seen much of a change there?
I would say it slowed down a little bit this year. Overall, year over year, in my territory, I'm down a little bit on what's come to market. When values were really jumping up, there was a lot that came on because I think some of these landowners thought, well, this is a good time to cash out, which makes sense. But we have had some no sales too. So I guess that's another interesting thing in the market right now is I've got a sale at $20,600, and then not even 10, 15 miles away, maybe a similar farm stalls out at a $12,500 or $13,000 an acre bid, and they end up no-selling it. They no-sale it, and then maybe comparatively, it's not that much difference. That's really been the thing that's a little bit confusing in our market right now. And for all appraisers, really, it's just been a wide range, and it's hard to make a good rhyme or reason for it.
And as we embark on a new year, Josh, what are some of your expectations for farmland values in 2025?
I think overall, I just got my market update and I see everything's down again today. So I think if we keep seeing the downward pressure on the commodity prices, It sounded like the Fed was going to cut rates a lot more this year, and now they're thinking maybe they won't cut them as much as they did. So I think if we stay in this, I'm going to say, higher interest rate environment from where we've been the last 5 to 10 years, and we keep seeing this downward pressure in commodity prices, I think it's going to be a lot harder to sustain the values where we are now. But I've been wrong many times before, but I think that the way things have been the last couple of years, and another big kind of shocker to me as a producer, even the input costs haven't come down at all. And some of the input costs in our area is even a little bit higher than it was last year. So we're sitting commodity price wise quite a bit lower than we were last year in January, and the input cost is staying the same. So I think there's potential to have a lot of strain on the market.
Yeah, those margins are definitely getting squeezed right now. You talked earlier about how diverse your area of Illinois is. How about green energy projects? Are you seeing wind or solar, anything in that way? And to speak to that, maybe its impact on the farmland market.
In my area, we've seen some solar projects going up. I've had some wind farms going up. That's a really hot topic in appraisal right now, is what is this going to do to the value of my land? Really, the short answer is we're not sure yet. Some of the wind turbines, these newer ones, they're paying a lot more than the wind turbines that were put up 10, 20, even almost 30 years ago now. So the newer ones that are paying $30,000 a year or maybe even a little bit more than that, we have had a few sales to show that is improving the value on the farms. But again, then you might have a sale where it shows no added value for that wind turbine. We have had a few sales like that, but as far as the solar projects go, a lot of these are just getting built. The oldest one in my area is only a year or two old. Really, until we get one of those solar farms to sell, we're not going to really be able to know what it's going to do on the value. When you put a whole farm in solar, you obviously cannot farm that ground anymore. It's really just a matter of valuing the income stream for that solar project. And as far as figuring out discount rates, cap rates, things like that, really until we have one hit the market, it's going to be kind of hard to tell what that value is.
And I would imagine that you're at least aware of some of the concerns out there among ag groups, particularly with these solar farms potentially displacing productive farm ground.
I hear a lot of conversation about that, conversation of why are we putting these solar farms on flat black dirt? Surely there's more marginal ground that we can put it on. But, on the flip side of that coin, there's a lot of people that say the farmer's gotten too good at what they do now and we're overproducing anyway. So if you want to kind of play devil's advocate there, then maybe someone can make an argument that we need to take a little bit more out of production. Me personally, I don't know if that's the right answer or not, but I've heard that argument out there. And another thing kind of with the solar too that I think is going to be interesting is there's a lot of acres that are quote unquote signed up, and basically they're just paying a minimal dollar per acre to keep that under contract. That project might not even be approved for a special use permit or anything yet, but they basically just have control of the ground if they would happen to start to build. So I think with everything politically and economically going on, it'll be really interesting to see how many of these projects even really come to the market and actually get built.
That's a good point. Josh, you said before that some of your appraisal experience has been on the swine side with some of the buildings. I can't help but think about Proposition 12, a California law that has to do with animal confinement, and some producers who have decided to basically build new or kind of reconfigure their housing to allow for more space to comply with Prop 12 because California is a big market for pork. Has Prop 12 kind of made its way into Illinois pork production?
I'm not an expert in that area, and so I can't really speak to that. But just as far as the swine production in Illinois, there for a while, it seemed like I would go out to appraise one or maybe two brand new swine finishing buildings throughout the year. But then once COVID hit, the building costs just went through the roof, where normally hog farmer was looking at maybe a 10-year payoff on the building and then another 10 years of profit before they'd have to refurbish the building or, do some major modifications on it. Well, the price has gone up so much that it's almost 20 years now just to get these buildings paid off. And so new construction has pretty well just been at a halt here. And then throw Prop 12 on top of that. And so that just basically meaning that we need more space for the hogs to meet the Prop 12 requirements. And so more space for hogs, unfortunately, means less production for the buildings that are there. And simple supply and demand, less supply, higher demand, that just kind of causes prices to go up. So I know it's definitely it's a big concern in the swine market right now.
We've covered a lot. Anything else before we talk about how our listeners can learn more about the work that you do?
I think that covers pretty well the majority of what I do and a little bit of my territory. So I think that's a good 1,000-foot view of kind of what goes on in my day-to-day.
So how can folks follow up with you and with Compeer?
If they want to follow up with myself or Compeer, they can get a hold of me directly. My email is josh.miller@compeer.com. Or you can go to www.compeer.com and navigate to the appraisal website. And there you'll be able to find kind of some regional maps, search your county, your area, should be able to get you in touch with a local appraiser that very specializes in that area.
Join us next time to learn more from our internal appraisal experts. Compeer Financial, committed to serving agriculture and rural America. Visit us at compeer.com to sign up for our appraisal e-newsletter.